Margaret Hayes had built her empire one careful decision at a time. At 58, she stood at the helm of Hayes Technologies, a woman whose tailored suits and decisive manner had earned respect in boardrooms across the country. But on this particular evening, wearing an elegant red dress at the annual charity gala, she felt the room beginning to spin. The last thing she remembered was the concerned face of a waiter. And then, darkness. When consciousness returned, Margaret found herself on a worn leather sofa that had seen better days. The smell of motor oil and old coffee filled her nostrils. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows, illuminating a workspace filled with tools hanging on pegboards and vintage cars in various states of repair. And beside her sat a little girl, perhaps 5 years old, with strawberry blonde hair and the most earnest blue eyes Margaret had ever seen. "You're awake," the child said softly, her small hand patting Margaret's arm with surprising gentleness. "Daddy said you were just sleeping, but I wanted to make sure you were okay." Margaret tried to sit up, her head still foggy. Where am I?" "You're in Daddy's garage," the little girl explained, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "I'm Emma. What's your name?" Before Margaret could answer, a man appeared in the doorway, backlit by the morning sun. He was perhaps in his early 40s, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, with kind eyes that held a mixture of concern and relief. "You're awake, thank goodness." He walked over, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm Jack Miller. You collapsed at the hotel across the street last night. The ambulance was 20 minutes out, and you were coming around, so... Well, my shop was closest. I hope you don't mind." Margaret looked down at herself. Someone had draped a clean blanket over her, and her shoes were neatly placed beside the sofa. A glass of water sat on an upturned crate nearby. "The paramedics checked you over when they arrived," Jack continued, reading her confusion. "They said it looked like exhaustion and dehydration. Nothing serious, but they wanted someone to stay with you through the night. Your phone was locked, and well, you seemed so tired. I didn't want to leave you at the hospital alone." Margaret should have felt uncomfortable, should have been calling her assistant, demanding her car, returning to her carefully controlled world. But something in the quiet simplicity of this place, in the gentle concern of this stranger and his daughter, made her pause. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That was very kind." Emma beamed. "Daddy's the kindest person in the whole world. He fixes things." "I fix cars, sweet pea," Jack said with a gentle smile, ruffling his daughter's hair. "Can I get you anything, Ms.?" "Margaret. Just Margaret." She accepted the water gratefully. "And yes, perhaps something to eat, if it's not too much trouble." "We were just about to have breakfast," Emma announced, taking Margaret's hand with the unself-conscious trust of childhood. "We make pancakes on Saturdays. Do you like pancakes?" In the small apartment above the garage, Margaret found herself sitting at a modest kitchen table while Jack moved comfortably around the kitchen and Emma chattered away about her kindergarten, class, her best friend Sophie, and the stray cat that visited their shop. The pancakes were simple but delicious. The coffee was strong and hot. And for the first time in years, Margaret felt something she hadn't even realized she'd been missing. She felt at home. "Your mother must be wondering where you both are," Margaret said, immediately regretting the assumption. Jack's smile faltered just slightly. "It's just us two. Emma's mom passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry," Margaret said, and meant it. "We're okay," Emma chimed in with the resilience of the young. "Daddy takes good care of me, and I help in the shop sometimes. I'm very good at organizing the small wrenches." Margaret found herself smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I'm sure you are." As the morning wore on, Margaret made her calls. Her assistant was frantic, but Margaret assured her everything was fine. She'd be in Monday. For now, she needed the weekend. She surprised herself by meaning it. Jack didn't hover or pry. He simply worked in his shop, Emma playing nearby, occasionally bringing Margaret a book or showing her a drawing. The rhythm of the day was unhurried, punctuated by Emma's laughter and the steady sounds of honest work. "Why did you stay?" Margaret asked Jack that afternoon, as they watched Emma chase a butterfly in the small yard behind the shop. Jack considered the question. "My wife, Sarah, used to volunteer at a crisis center. She always said that sometimes people need kindness more than they need solutions." "You looked lost. Successful, obviously, but lost. I just thought maybe you needed someone to care, even if I was a stranger." Margaret felt unexpected tears prick her eyes. When had she last felt cared for, rather than managed? When had anyone looked at her and seen beyond the CEO, the businesswoman, the empire builder? "I've spent 30 years building my company," she said softly. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot to build a life." Emma returned, slightly out of breath, and climbed into Margaret's lap without hesitation. "Will you come back and visit us?" she asked. "Daddy says you're probably very busy, but maybe sometimes?" Margaret looked at this child, who had shown her more uncomplicated affection in one day than she'd experienced in years. She looked at Jack, who had helped a stranger without expecting anything in return, who had chosen kindness in a world that often chose convenience. "Yes," Margaret heard herself say, "I'd like that very much." Over the following months, Margaret became a regular presence at Miller's Auto Repair. She learned that Jack had inherited the shop from his father, that he took pride in honest work and fair prices. She learned that Emma loved stories and drawing, that she was gentle with animals and fiercely protective of her father, and they learned about her. Not the CEO, but Margaret, the woman who had sacrificed personal happiness for professional success, who had forgotten what it felt like to be someone's priority, who had built walls so high she'd forgotten how to climb down. Margaret began to change her Saturdays. She taught Emma about business, in simple terms that made the child giggle. Emma taught Margaret about joy, about finding wonder in small things, about the importance of butterfly watching and pancake breakfasts. Jack never asked for anything, but Margaret found ways to help. A college fund for Emma, established quietly. Equipment for the shop that mysteriously appeared. Recommendations that brought new business. But more than that, she gave her time, her attention, her growing affection. One evening, a year after that fateful collapse, Margaret sat in her penthouse apartment and realized something had shifted. The awards on her walls seemed less important. The view from her window seemed emptier. She picked up her phone and called Jack. "I've been thinking," she said. "I need a partner, someone to help run the foundation I'm starting, someone who understands kindness, who knows what really matters. It won't pay what you're worth, but—" "Margaret," Jack interrupted gently. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. You and Emma, you saved me that night. You showed me what I'd been missing. Let me do something meaningful with what I've built. Let me help others the way you helped me." There was a long pause. Then Jack said, "Can Emma still organize the small wrenches?" Margaret laughed, really laughed, for perhaps the first time in decades. "Emma can organize whatever she wants." The Ida Hayes Foundation for Family Support opened 6 months later. Jack brought his gentle wisdom and practical understanding of struggle. Margaret brought her resources and her newfound compassion. Together they helped single parents, supported widows and widowers, provided for children in need. And Emma became the heart of it all, reminding them daily what they were working for. On the foundation's first anniversary, Margaret stood in what had once been Miller's Auto Repair, now transformed into a community center. Families gathered, sharing meals, finding support, discovering that kindness still existed in the world. Emma tugged on Margaret's sleeve. "Are you glad you fainted that night?" she asked with childish directness. Margaret knelt down, taking the child's hands in hers. I'm glad I woke up in your daddy's garage. I'm glad I met you both. Sometimes we have to fall down before we can learn how to really stand up. Jack joined them, putting his arm around Margaret's shoulders in a gesture that had become natural over the months. She's talking philosophy again, he said to Emma with a wink. It's okay, Emma said sagely. Grown-ups need to figure things out too. As Margaret looked at them, at the community they'd built together, she understood something profound. Success wasn't measured in quarterly reports or stock prices. It was measured in moments like these. In the warmth of connection, in the grace of second chances, she had spent a lifetime building an empire. But it took collapsing in a stranger's garage, waking up to a little girl's kindness, to understand what true wealth really meant. And in the end, that made all the difference.